Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my last video of 2019. I thought, I did all my Avatar sort of end of year stuff. Why not do a kind of end of year video for my channel? So let's do it in a similar way and kind of highlight some of the videos this year that I felt were some of the kind of better ideas that I had, the ones that I was most happy with. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. This is going to be 5 video series that I did in 2019 that I think are perhaps worth going back to, checking out, or if you're a new subscriber in just the last few months or from earlier in the year and you may not be aware of. So before I begin, I'll just make it really clear. All these videos that I mentioned are going to be linked in the description of this video below. So if you want to check one of these, I'm going to have a pretty long description for this video. So they'll all be linked there, and feel free to ask questions and stuff like that in the comments about certain videos, and I'll do my best to answer them. But anyway, let's jump in with the first video series that I want to talk about. And that is just these 2 videos that I did. They're kind of random in that it's not really the style of content that I usually do, but it was one that I felt like I had to talk about, especially this first one. It was a response to this article that was put out by comicbookresources.com. Avatar, 20 weird things about Aang and Katara's relationship that fans ignore. So this went around, I usually don't really hear about these sort of, kind of bad articles that go up on these type of websites that don't have too much thought put into them. But this one went around because of how bad it was. So I felt the need to just respond to this and really delve into this topic because, look, I know it's fun to make fun of the shipping stuff and so on, but in general I tend not to really, discuss it too much. But this was a nice opportunity to at least, take a little step into that and just address the weirdness with some Zutara fans and some of the topics that are so often brought up in shipping discussions, mainly from Zutara fans, about Katara and Aang. So this one was very funny to go through because it took until one of the final points for the author of the article to finally admit that they were a Zutara fan. It was so clear from the points earlier on that was the case, but they just weren't saying it. They just weren't admitting and being honest from the start that, they just don't like Katang because it gets in the way of Zutara. And, a lot of the other points along the way, it's not just that it was the usual sort of character assassination against Aang and, not acting like Katara doesn't have her own free will and stuff like that people usually do. There was just a lot of bad points along the way. So, it was a very enjoyable video to do because I don't do this sort of thing usually. So when there was another sort of similar article, Screen Rant's article, where they went through 25 things wrong with Avatar The Last Airbender, I felt, okay, let's just do a kind of follow-up to that and address a more general topic. This one isn't as bad, but it again is, as usual, lacking in a lot of detail or explanation. They didn't need to do 25. This list probably should have been cut down to about 15 or 10. 25 was just stretching it far too much. I think that's a large part of why this article really falls apart. There's just no detail. It's super unclear if they've even seen Korra or anything like that, and that there's some reference to this to the comics, some references to Korra, but then there's other points where it's clear they haven't watched it. It's a weird article, and it was just a fun one to go through. So, it's one of those things where I by no means would want to make this a regular thing on my channel, just responding to these sort of poorly written articles. But every so often, I think it is fun to just address that side of the fandom, that there is this sort of, there are sites out there who put out these very weak articles. I know a lot of people are like, why do you even draw attention to these articles? That's giving them more credit than you should just by doing a video on them. But given that I don't usually do it, I thought it was at least cool to do twice to address some different topics that I don't get a chance otherwise to address. Next up is another kind of series of videos that I did this year. So one of these kind of event type things I did on my channel this year. So at the very start of the year, I announced and opened up voting in the Avatar The Last Airbender Awards. And then towards the end of the year, I opened up voting for the Legend of Korra Awards. People voted in a variety of different categories. I counted all the votes, and I released the results for both the Avatar and the Korra awards. These definitely were things people were very excited for when I announced them, in that at the start of the year, people really liked the Avatar one. And then throughout the middle of the year, I think I did have a good amount of people asking about the Korra one. And so when it finally was announced, I did actually get a good amount of votes initially. Now again, my channel only has a certain amount of reach, so there was only a limited number of votes that actually came in. But I felt just enough to get some decent, data basically out of the results. So the videos I'm highlighting here are basically the Avatar and Korra awards results video. But also I have linked below the podcast discussions for both the Avatar and Korra awards with myself and Greg, where if you want to know like what came second and third in each category, that's the podcast you should check out, where I go through all of the data, like how many votes each one got, that sort of thing. So they're definitely a cool thing that happened in the year for the channel. Next up, the Avatar Trivia Challenge, another sort of more interactive style video I did that people liked, I think because it was very different. Especially those of you who kind of followed me onto YouTube from like the site, where the trivia was often a huge part of what we did over there. This was a very fun thing to do, and I think a lot of people who participated really enjoyed it. I initially announced it as like, it's just for fun, there won't be a prize, but I knew from the start that I would actually kind of surprise whoever won with the prize. I didn't want like the whole thing of this to be about just winning the prize. So in the end it was fun. Like, it was just, you get to choose a specific Avatar video topic for me to do. That was the prize I did. But yeah, the first trivia challenge, so the videos I'm highlighting here are the video where I announced it and went over the idea of it, announced the questions, and then the other video here is also the results, where I go over both the answers to the questions in addition to the results. Now with this, I feel there's also a bit of a topic here to discuss of like, I actually have had a good amount of people ask me, when is the next Avatar trivia? This one was kind of like back in February, March. Why has there not been another one since? It's listed as being number 1. Where's number 2? I think I got this across a little bit in the initial announcement video and then in bits and pieces afterwards, but like, I find it very difficult to come up with good Avatar trivia questions, because I acknowledge that the Avatar fan base tends to be very, very knowledgeable. So it's very difficult just by default to get good questions that are not going to be something that everyone immediately knows. So you have to really sort of go into maybe that little bit more obscure. But then you also have to keep the fact that like, what is a good trivia question? And you don't want it to be a question that is just impossible to answer by the nature of it being just so obscure or something like that. You want it to be a fair question that is challenging, that is capable of being answered, but is a challenge to answer. And it's so difficult to do that, and that's why I sort of exhausted like the questions that I had built up on that first trivia. And I'm always trying to come up with other ones, but I really want to avoid a situation, if at all possible, where I put out a trivia challenge and everyone who enters gets full marks, and it's just this thing where like, yeah, it was just everyone wins type thing. And I think that's the approach that you sort of have to take with this sort of thing, of like, if you go anything beyond challenging with questions, people are just going to get them all right. That's my experience, having done trivia for years on the site and seeing how the results went, seeing how it went when people put weaker questions up, and that's the way it was. You have to go hard with the questions, or everyone's going to get them right. And that was sort of evidenced by the fact that the results of this trivia, like, 2 people got full marks to win it, which I was happy that it wasn't more than that. And it was crazy like how close so many other people got. Like, nearly half of the people who entered like got 10 or above, I believe, or something like that, out of 11. So that was kind of a pretty telling thing of like, they were my tough questions that I had, and like so many people nearly got full marks. And that's why I don't want to just do another trivia because like I said I would, when I don't have the questions to make it happen. I will more than likely be doing another trivia once The Shadow of Kyoshi is released, and I'll make it like a Kyoshi specific trivia. At least those books I think will offer a chance to have a bit more of a challenging question base, and especially once the second book is out, there'll be a lot of content to draw from. So that's more or less sort of where I'm setting my sights right now for, like, guaranteed there will be another trivia once that book is released. But always be aware that it's something I'm thinking about. So if one just pops up, that you'll know that it was planned in the background the whole time. So I just wanted to address that here. So yeah, the trivia. Next up is the Avatar Explained videos that I sort of started this year. These were very fun to do because, it obviously just started off with just, I wasn't even planning on making it a full-on series. I just wanted to make a video addressing some, I think, just frustrations that I tended to have with some of the common criticisms, mainly with the book 2 finale that people tend to have of Korra, the cosmic Korra and Janora's light situation. So I just did a super detailed, like really, really detailed explanation of what Janora does, why Korra becomes a blue giant and stuff like that, and put that video up. And people seemed to really, really like it. They liked how in-depth it was. They liked the discussion. And I brought up, I think towards the end of it, like as part of the point I was trying to make, the idea of like, is this more complicated than some of the other stuff? And people actually were like, why don't you explain those other things as well? So that's sort of where it became a little bit of a series. And I did the one of like how the Avatar cycle survived Aang's death and how the rock unlocked the Avatar state. I did like how does Amon take bending away. I did a Patreon one on pro bending. I did one where I addressed like the possibilities of can the past lives come back after what happened to them in Korra. And I've had some people asking like, oh, is there going to be any more of those Avatar Explained videos? And a large part of that is just that I feel like I did most of them fairly quickly, because if you remember, I actually ended up releasing pretty much all of those videos borderline back to back. Like I was just sort of in the zone after I made that first book 2 one, and I just really just went for it with the other ones, and they just came out very, very quickly. And I sort of just used up kind of all of the options that I had. Like there's other little ones, but like I don't want to make just a really short video explaining something super minor, so I wanted to keep it to being more of the bigger ones, that when I put out an Avatar Explained video, it is actually like properly explaining something in that way, and it's not just, it's not just trying to be that little bit, clickbaity of like, oh, let me explain this thing, but actually when you watch the video, it's just like a theory I kind of have. And that's why I was very cautious in those videos when I did present something that was more of a theory, to make it super clear that like in the middle of all these sort of facts and quotes and stuff like that, I was making it clear that look, this one is a theory, but here's why I feel the theory is based in like the series and how it works and so on. So that's why you haven't seen like as many of them, just because I think I covered most of the ones that I felt were required. And it's a series that exists on my channel. I can come back to it when something does come up that needs more of an explanation. And a lot of that, again, depends on just new content coming out to present more ideas, present more options. And then the last thing I want to mention here is just the Rise of Kyoshi content that I did this year. I was very happy with the amount that I put out, and then just the quality of it as well. That I was considering, like, from the get-go with this book, of just, like, it's a full novel. Like, I'm going to have to do a good amount of videos on it just to cover it full stop. And when I read it, I was kind of like, I kind of want to do a chapter discussion on every single chapter, like a video per chapter. But is that too much? Would people think that's way over the top? But then when I started it, people liked it. I felt like, it was actually the good idea. I didn't feel like I was ever stretching to be like, fill a video just based on one chapter. No, it felt like I could have gone on longer on each chapter if I really wanted to. But so it meant like I had nearly like 40 videos this year just covering the Rise of Kyoshi. And it's been fun over the course of the year to see, you know, people reading that book and finding those videos, wanting to see some discussion, and my videos kind of being one of the key kind of, you know, sources for discussion out there, because I did a video in each chapter. So I have chapter 1 discussion, chapter 2 discussion, all the way up to chapter 32. Not to mention, we did 3 big podcasts discussing the book. The first one on the first third of the book, second one on the middle third of the book, and then the last one covering the final third of the book. So, you know, just in podcast, there's like 7-8 hours of discussion there. And then count up how many hours all of the chapter discussions come together, and it's probably somewhere in the region of, you know, like, what, 10-15 hours or something like that. So it kind of highlights that, like, when the content is there, I am absolutely willing to put in the time, effort, and number of videos to make as much discussion content as I feel is needed, as is warranted. And so, you know, if the comics improve and stuff like that, I'm absolutely going to deliver more content. And I think the Kyoshi novel was just a good example of that. And I'm so excited for Shadow of Kyoshi because, you know, it's highly likely that I'll probably do the exact same style of coverage. Of, like, I doubt the style is gonna change that much. So chapter analysis per chapter are definitely something I'm planning to do for the book, assuming I have the time once the book is released to do all of that stuff. But yeah, it was just super enjoyable to do that, to finally be able to sort of, you know, do kind of what I feel is like my strength as a fan, as a YouTuber for Avatar, is to just super analyze the new content and have the content be there to warrant lots of analysis. So that was just really fun. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the videos I mentioned here. But also, are there videos from this year of mine that you felt I should have mentioned here, or that you like and would like to see more of? I probably don't do this enough, but, you know, like, this is kind of, I suppose, the opportunity of just, like, what style of videos, regards to, like, Avatar stuff, do you like, do you want to see? Because, like, I have my own way that I tend to do it, of, like, you guys know I cover pretty much all of the news, and we'll do the podcast, you know, when there's stuff to talk about, I'll do the reviews, but it is that sort of other content, sort of like the stuff that I did here, I brought up here in this video. It's like, you know, the more interactive content, like the awards and the trivia and stuff like that, the article kind of discussions, you know. Let me know what content, you know, you liked. Is there any videos beyond what I mentioned here that you particularly enjoyed this year? Because that's the sort of information that I kind of like to know, of just, like, was there, like, a specific discussion that you thought was really well done or stuff like that. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.